Today, we're going to be showing you how easy it can be to acquire the data from the shop floor and merge it with the data from a CMM or other automated measurement device. Then that information will automatically be used to generate an FAI or other type of inspection report. But we can never get very far in a presentation without talking about one of our key advantages. That's the database. All the information you're about to see is securely stored in a database on your secured server on your network, and it's available real time across departments. So let's jump into the software and see how easy shop floor data collection can be. So for this part, we're going to jump into the software and step you through the process of how you would actually do this at your facility. And it all starts with the planning phase. We can't get into production without part of the planning. So we're going to just simply open a new drawing. We have a sample drawing here that we use. And once that opens, you can see this is a PDF. Now we can use any pictorial-based drawing, a PDF, a TIFF, a JPEG, or whatever really you have that's a picture type drawing. Additionally, we do have the functionality to bring in a 3D model with the PMI data. So we have that as well. But from here, it's just a regular 2D print, nothing special about it. We're going to click on our auto balloon button, our single click auto balloon. There are options here for multiple pages, and you can turn off basic and reference. But for this case, in this demonstration, we'll just hit OK and let it run through the process. Now the proprietary OCR takes over, optical character recognition. And it's looking at this print, specifying what is a GD&T and what are dimensions, and analyzing that entire thing. So you can see that took about 15 seconds, and the entire print is now ballooned. But even more importantly, if I look down here in what we call our bill of characteristics, all the information has already been extracted and populated in the database. This is all in the database real time. Nominal information, tolerances, the characteristic themselves, what it is, the drawing zone that it was, that the dimension is located in. All that information was all extracted in that first 15 seconds. So now we have our information, and we can also acquire additional information off the print. For example, here's our material. We can come over here and click our material button and simply select it by box selecting it like this. And if we look to the right over here, we can see that our material has now been populated. We can check on our little pencil right here and add additional information like material codes, spec numbers, cert numbers, supplier list. There's a pull down for that, and you can add supplier just by simply clicking this add new. A lot of our customers come over here to files, and they'll include a certification for that material. And once I hit save and close, now that certification and the information is all stored in the database and associated with this part record. But we also have a couple creature comforts that I'll point out to you as well. For example, let's say it missed a dimension, for example. We don't claim to be perfect. It is going to miss some every once in a while. So if we have this, and let's say this was a really busy print. Well, this print can also, it's hard to identify sometimes some of the characteristics it's missing. We have this function over here called whiteout dimension. If we click on that, it whites out everything that it did get. So now we can easily see features that it did not get. And if it did not get something, we have a manual clipping tool right here with the little scissors. And then it's simply a box select. We'll box select it just like this. As soon as I let go, it's automatically parsing it and analyzing what it is and populating it over here. We'll go toe-to-toe with anyone for our OCR technology and how it analyzes GD&T. So please feel free to test us out on that, and anyone else as well. So it has all of that information. and we can turn off the, well, once we click away, now we can see that it has all the dimensions, and we can turn off the whiteout, and now we have all of our dimensions listed. And now we can come over here. Now we're out of sequence, right? Because we deleted the number 6 and then we added another one. So it doesn't realize it. It's not going to automatically populate number 6 because it doesn't know if it should or not. So we can simply come up here to renumbering, and it renumbers it, puts it back in order, just like we'd like. And by the way, for those machine shops that are listening that have to convert from inch to metric or metric to inch, sometimes you'll get a metric print, for example, and then need it to be converted to inch out on the shop floor. And the magic of 25.4 on a calculator is revealed, right? We also have this little convert button right up here. You simply click on this and it converts the entire print over to the other unit, whichever one you're using, it'll just use the other one. So this is a very, very simple way and you can print this out as well, to communicate the alternate dimensions for the shop floor or for your customer if you need to. Now, so you're aware, you can change the number of decimal places in this as well. So that's all customizable. So wanted to show you those couple features. In addition to that, also wanted to point out that if there is a dimension, like this is a plus dimension, for example, we can look over here and see that it actually pulled the plus tolerance correctly. But if there is not a dimension listed like this one, it will pull it from a tolerance table, and the tolerance table that's located here. It's predefined and then it uses it. But again, if there is a dimension, it will override that. Okay. So also, let's zoom in on this a little bit. Also wanted to point out different options here for gauge category and characteristic designator. Keep in mind, we're still in the planning phase. We're still in the planning process, so that what we're really doing is we're trying to streamline the downstream effects of measuring the part. So by selecting gauge category and saying, hey, I want to measure this with a blade micrometer or whatever it could be, caliper or what have you. And let's say this is a KPC or a key characteristic or a flight safety or something along those lines. And by the way, there is a plus sign here. You can add whatever designator you have. Maybe it's a CTQ for medical or whatever. Let's say it's just defined as a key characteristic. Once we hit save, so a couple things happen. In our designator column, we now see it's a key characteristic, and we can sort our bill of characteristics down here by designator and just have it note that. Additionally, we have it set up in the software in this version to automatically update the sampling rule if it's a key characteristic. So now it's saying, okay, I want to be based on an AQL table as opposed to the default. In this case, the default is 1 per lot. So you can set up rules to automatically do that. In addition, you can also set up different kinds of rules. For example, let's say the perpendicularity that I just selected here. Let's say you want, for every perpendicularity, you want it set up to where it's automatically set up for a gauge category of coordinate measuring machine. Next time, or if you set that default up, next time you balloon a print and it's defined as a perpendicularity by dimension type right here, it'll automatically populate your gauge category to coordinate measuring machine. So you can set up certain defaults to that as well. Okay. So speaking of gauge category, we also have a full gauge management system integrated right into the software. For example, here is a list of all of our gauges. Here's the blade micrometer that we have. It has the basic information for it, the gauge information, and then any location details. And we'll get into this in the shop floor system as well to show you how you can utilize this data out on the floor and how it all works together. If you got it from a certain supplier, calibration vendor, last calibrated by, so it keeps track of all your calibration results and your frequency, and any cert numbers associated with it. Also, if we go up here to notification settings, we can be notified by email if there's any expired gauges Or what a lot of our customers use is the expire soon. So let's say, hey, 30 days, 45 days from when it actually expires, email this person. And that you can have multiple people here, and you can also have external people. So let's say you have a third-party source to your calibrations. You can notify them maybe 45 days in advance and say, hey, this is coming up for calibration. Make sure you get in here and get it calibrated in time. So we support all that. And also, if you happen to have, if you're using a different software, or a lot of our customers too just track it by an Excel sheet, we can import that and bring it right into HiQA. So you're not having to duplicate it. You're not having to re-input them one at a time. We can simply bring your list in completely. But one thing that we do have that we don't believe anyone else does, if I come down here to this thread gauge, for example, and I'll come down here to the bottom and say usage history tab. So if I click on my usage history, I have full transparency of every dimension that this gauge ever checked, right down to the job number, the lot number, the serial number, what dimension it was, what specific dimension it was, what the call out was, and whether it was a good or bad part. If we scroll over here, we know by login who measured it, the time and date stamp it was done. If it came from a specific machine, you can put that here. If it's tied to a nonconformance report, you can put that here. All the information is stored in the database. And now because we have the dimensional information, we have the gauge information, now we can start correlating those and making sense of them. Where this becomes really, really powerful is if you had maybe a drop gauge. Let's take that thread gauge, for example. Thread gauges are notorious, right? You drop them to get a little burr on the edge or the lead, and it's always the lead edge, right? But let's say it was bad and it started checking parts incorrectly, and we started failing good parts. You can come back here and see where it started to check badly or check parts incorrectly. And now you have a great reference for quarantining parts and then having to go through and remeasure them if you need to. Saves a lot of time from that. So we'll revisit this too when we get to our shop floor interface, but wanted to show you that as well. But let's jump into the manufacturing side. So most of what we've done so far is pretty much on the quality side, but here's where manufacturing will really get involved. Let's go up here to part properties and come down here to manufacturing operations. In manufacturing operations, this is where we're going to identify what dimensions are going to be affected in what operation. For example, let's say we're just getting a blank of aluminum for this, and we're going to rough it in Op10. Well, let's say we're just going to make a blank of the outside in Op10, and it's a 3-axis machine. We're just going to do the overall, the width there. There's a little step distance there, and the overall length, and maybe the overall height, and maybe this little step height right here. And let's say that's going to be our Op10. We come over here and simply click Add Operation. And now we have an operation added, and we have multiple colors here to define multiple operations. And you can add as many as you want. You can box select them like this and say, I want to add that operation. And it changes it to a different color so you can easily identify what operations are affected, or what dimensions are affected by what operation. And for Op10, for example, we can click our pencil again, and we can put in here if it's associated to a specific work cell, if it's associated with a specific machine, a process. We'll get into the process when we, in a couple of weeks when we talk about our APQP documentation, automation. But we can also just define this, whatever we want to call it. Just call it the roughing operation, for example, and hit OK. And now we look up over here, and we do have our roughing op, is our Op10. In addition to that, we can come down here into our bill of characteristics, and we see we have manufacturing operation. We can select right from here our roughing op. And now for those customers that create in-process sheets for their operation, for their specific operations, we just did that. But more importantly, we didn't change the numbering sequence of any of the numbers. They're still the same numbers, and so they can be correlated to the final inspection. So now we have an in-process print. We can also come down here because I'm going to select all of these. Because why? Well, in a roughing up, you're not going to, machine it to the finished dimension, right? You're going to leave some stock on there for the finishing op. So we can come in here for only this operation, and we can update the nominal value. Let's say we want to add 20 thou to this value. We can add, subtract, we can go by percentage, whatever you really want to do, we can do here. We can change tolerances. We can even assign gauge category for this operation and say, hey, I want to measure this with my blade micrometer or whatever it is. Caliper, you can change dimension types. You can change anything you want, but you're only changing it, again, for this operation, not for the final. Once we hit apply and close, now if we look, all of our nominals have been adjusted by that 20 thousandths. So that's the new nominal. But just for this operation. We can also come up here to inspection reports and click on inspection planner. And you can put whatever template you want right here. This is just a generic template that we have. And now here it is in Excel. This is just simply an Excel spreadsheet. We get a lot of questions. Well, can I change it? Can I do anything? It's in Excel. You can do anything that you can do in Excel. But you'll see that this is only for Op 10. And here's our updated nominals. Notice the 20 thousandths has been added. Identifying them, what we want them to use for, again, the planning process. This one is our key characteristic that we had. And now they can just simply enter this information in. Well, now we want to start switching gears a little bit and start talking about bringing information back into Inspection Manager, right? Back into we want the actual information to start getting us actionable information. So this is one way to do it. This is probably the hardest way, but it's sometimes for some shops, it's a great place to start because you could just enter information here, for example, and then what happens is we can pull this Excel sheet directly into Inspection Manager and populate the actual information, okay, the actuals. So that is one way to do it. There are two other ways that we'll go through very briefly here. And I'm just going to kill this and say don't save. What we want to focus on mostly here is our shop floor interface. So we have two different shop floor interfaces for gathering data on the shop floor. One is called Explore and the other one's called Express. And I'll introduce both of them to you here. Generally speaking, Explore gives you more information about every job, and Express limits what the user can see, so they only see what's assigned to them. So it really depends how you want to run your shop floor. Also notice scan badge right here. We can have it scan badges, so they can log in that way if you happen to have a badge-based system in your facility. So a few things I want to point out here. This is just the home page for the Explorer. Firstly, we notice we have a gauge button here. But before I get into that, sorry, let me just introduce that this is an extremely lightweight application that runs in Google Chrome. Okay, it's simply browser-based. This is going to an IP address. You can see it right up here, but it's going to an IP address in your intranet. It's not going externally. It's not hitting the web. This is just an IP address internal to your server, so that way it knows where to populate the information. But a lot of our customers will use just a tablet for this. And again, because it's just a browser based, they can just pull up an IP address. So it doesn't matter if it's Apple or Windows or what have you. You can use pretty much any tablet. Some customers will use a workstation, a computer workstation out on the floor. And even some of our customers start with putting this in their QC lab and having if they have some manual inspection inspectors that are getting this information, they'll just have them put in that data directly. But let's touch on the gauges very quickly. And this is the full gauge list that we saw in Inspection Manager for our measurement library, for our gauge library. And we can slim it down to what we want to see here. We'll use that ever popular blade micrometer. And now we can see we only have one. So if I want to use one, it's this one. And if I want to go grab this from its location, I simply click checkout. And now here's part of the neat thing about the database, right? Because it has most of this information already populated. It knows the gauge ID, it knows the tracking status, it knows the location, it knows all of this information. All I have to do is, I'm logged in as Joe Inspector, so it knows who's logged in, and it's assuming that I'm the one checking this gauge out. And then I just have to say where I'm taking it. I'm taking it to the main plant, and I say check out. And now immediately, the current place has been updated, and the tracking status and the current users all been updated. And then when I want to bring this back, I simply click check in and say return to storage, and it puts it right back into the storage location that's defined in the gauge library. So all of your gauges, if you ever are looking for a gauge or if you have any lost gauges or whatever, this is a very good way to track your gauges in your facility. But going back to the home screen, the two that we're going to be focusing on mostly are right here, because that's where we enter data into the database. But did want to point out, we do have a scan barcode. If you happen to have a traveler that goes along with your parts around the shop, you can associate an inspection plan to a certain part and then assign that barcode to it. So it knows all they have to do would be to scan the barcode of the traveler, and it would pull up the information or the correct information that they need to enter information in for the actuals. So it's a super easy way to pull up the right part. So we can go into gallery search here, and we can just see that we have different prints here. Anyone used to like an Apple product that has pictures? This is just, it looks very similar to that. And all we have to do is go through here and pick out the part that we're using. Are we using this part, this part, this part? We can also identify it by customer name, project name, part name, even job number. We can come down here and select, oh, I'm on job number 63. Oh, here's my part for job number 63, the one I was using. And now I can simply click into here, and it gives us a great dashboard here to know, okay, how am I doing from a completion standpoint? Are any bad? Is any failed? And now I can go into this job and then into these samples themselves. And we all have different dashboards for each step of the process. So once I go into this part, now this is the final inspection. I'm going to delve into this a little bit deeper in just a couple minutes, but I did want to point out here that we can go into our roughing operation. Notice our manufacturing operation up here. If we just go into our roughing operation, now I only have the dimensions that were defined in that roughing operation. And I need to, now here's where the data starts to come together, right? And by the way, this is, as a side note, this is a very, again, lightweight, user-friendly. You can pan this around. You can zoom in and out if you need to. You can change the look here if you need to. What some of our customers really like is this little bar down here at the bottom. And what this does is say, hey, this is your nominal, and this is where you're in spec, and this is where you're out of spec. Instead of kind of doing the math in your head very quickly, it kind of shows you right here. This was kind of surprising to us because we thought it was just a neat thing, but we find a lot of customers really like that and really use it quite a bit. But then we just come over here, and I'll tell you what that is in a second, and we select the tool that we're going to use. Now, this is where the planning phase streamlines things, well, downstream, because in the gauge category, we selected blade micrometer for Op10. And if you remember that, we did that a couple minutes ago. Now that we selected that, I'm only seeing a list for the blade micrometers. Whereas if I didn't select that, I'd have to weed through here and try to figure out where my micrometer is, what I'm using for this. So this is a good example of where the planning phase can help streamline things downstream. Also note here that it says expired no. This will not allow information to be entered if the gauge is expired. So it also helps to make sure you don't get erroneous data in your database. So we have this blade micrometer, and we can say, I'm going to use that. And now that's our gauge. Now, if you can see, this is actually blinking. It's blinking orange right now. Well, it's listening. If you happen to have any RS-232 outputs or wireless or Bluetooth gauges at your facility, it's listening right now. For example, I'll hit Control, and that's what was in here before on my keyboard, and now you'll see Control on here. So it's just listening for information. Now, you don't have to have that, of course. You can tell that the keypad here is set up for a touch screen. And on a tablet or a PC, you can simply enter the information in. If you have 0.5, let's say it's 0.51, we'll hit Accept. It turns green and then automatically goes to the next one and prompts them for the next one. They don't have to. They can select any one they want. But let's say it retains the same gauge because it assumes if you have one, you're going to keep measuring it. But let's say, for example, we had a go, no-go gauge for this. Okay, so it's an attribute data, and we're going to measure it with that. We write out on the floor, even though it's looking for numbers, right down here, there's a pass-fail option. If we simply toggle that, it changes our measured result, and we can say that's a good part, it passed. Okay, we could change that because that's not the tool we're using. And then we hit Accept, same idea, it turns green and prompts right to the next one. Now, let's say this measures 5. And then we hit Accept. So it's a bad reading, right? So if it's a bad reading, it'll automatically pop up and say, whoa, wait a minute here. This measurement is out of tolerance. Would you like to measure it again? And if you click on Measure Again, you can enter the information in just like you did the first time. Hit Accept, the same prompt comes up. But let's say it really is bad. And we say Keep Failed. Now it automatically prompts us to start a nonconformance record. And we can simply click on Add New. And again, the power of the database. It has all of this information pre-populated. It knows the job number, who's doing it, date, timestamp. It automatically assigns a unique nonconformance number. If it's associated with a machine or work center or an inspection center, you can put it here. You can put any comments you'd want to, and then the status. Hey, it's a scrap part. It was bad. Now we have a defect code we can put in here and say, oh yeah, this is from, let's say, just say machining. And we hit OK. Now that nonconformance record is in the system and in the database. We can also set up to where notifications can be sent by email for nonconformances. So all of that information is captured, and we can also tell it turned red here, kind of pinkish, but red nonetheless. So that's Explorer. One thing wanted to also show you, since we're here together, is the Express, to give you a flavor for the differences. And you have to log in here just like we did before. And please note, again, scan badges right here. So you can simply scan the badge in. Log into Express. You can see right away it looks different, right? There's not as much information. And being I'm logged in as Joe, I can only see the jobs that are assigned to Joe or Joe's what we call an inspection center. So we're simply going to select this because it's the only thing I can select because that's what's assigned to me. And same here. And now I have two different parts. Here's our samples right here. We have sample 1 and sample 10. And I can see that sample 10 is already inspected. I need to select this one. And now you can see the same kind of flavor, but different. Just a little different, right? It's slimmed down. There's not as much information. There's not as much entry. However, the same thing holds true. Enter the information here, click Accept, prompts me to the next one. Enter the wrong information. The same prompt comes up, and the same nonconformance is also populated as well. So it has a lot of the same functionality, but just depends if you want to slim it down for some individuals as opposed to others. And there's just a little bit of differences in the planning phase to figure out which way to go with this. So wanted to show that to you as well. So you're aware, we're not going to get into it during this webinar. However, we do have SPC associated with it. And we also have PQP Lite, which we'll show you in a couple of weeks. But you can have shop floor statistical process control to where you can see real time if you're in control, out of spec, We have automatic notifications for out of spec conditions, things of that nature as well. And that information can be put in right on the shop floor. But now I just want to show you how we can bring that data together. So in Inspection Manager, I'm going to go back to where we were before. Actually, let me switch and go back into Explorer here. I want to show it to you this way first. We'll go back into Explorer and then go back into our job. Okay. And our part here. Now, this part I have preset up. This is it's the same part, of course, but I wanted to paint a picture for you a little bit. So we talked about before, here's our manufacturing operation. This is only the finished part, right? So this is the complete finished part, but I'm on the shop floor. Now, if I'm on the shop floor and I'm measuring something, I can enter it right in here. For example, I'm measuring this thread. And here's my thread, here's my characteristics over on the side over here. If I simply select that thread, now I have information here I can populate. I can say, okay, what gauge am I using to measure this? Well, I'm going to use a thread plug gauge, and hey, I'm going to select this one. So I have my gauge list here, and is it good or bad? And I'm just going to say, well, it's a good part. I measured it, and I'm going to hit accept. Now you can see the middle section. This is broken up in threes because there's three different callouts here. There's a diameter, there's a thread, and there's a position. So the first section over here is for the diameter, the second section for the thread, the third section for the position. So I have information now for this, right? I've pre-populated this for the sake of time. There was a manual call out here for this through hole, and then manual call out here for these threads here. So those are done already. Well, now when I go back into Inspection Manager, I'm going to open that same file. And by the way, so you don't think I'm kind of hiding anything. We have job number 62 here, right? See that right there, job number 62? So when I go back into Inspection Manager, I'm going to open right here, we have job number 62. So I'm going to open job 62. And now when I come down here into the samples tab right here, I can click on here and see, I want to see my sample information. And this is the same exact information that you saw in on the shop floor. I have information for all of my manual checks. But now what I'm about to do, you really wouldn't have to do. I'm going to simulate bringing in data from a CMM. And we're going to bring it in from a file, but this would be done, again, automatically in the background. Here's all of the raw data from the CMM. And we're just simply going to say we're going to associate it with this sample number. And once we hit import, now it's going to merge the data from the shop floor along with the CMM data. And now we have a complete print that shows our information, our actual information, right on top of the print, right over the nominal information. And we can see that this came in bad. We can easily see what's good, what's bad, what's out of spec condition. And if we just simply come up here to inspection reports and click on single piece report, and please note, we can have multiple piece report. You can create your own reports. You can import your own report templates. As many templates as you want, you can have as much in here as you want. Because once we click on single piece, right down here, we have to select the template we're going to use. And you can have as many templates as you want. We're just happen to be set up for an AS9102 report right now. And once we hit create report, it's going to generate all of this information and take it over into Excel and generate our Form 1, which has all of our basic information, as you know. Form 2, which has our material right here. And then Form 3, which has all of our information, all of our dimensional information. Notice that the 4 times are all spelled out 4 ways. Here's the information from the shop floor that we populated. Here's the thread from the shop floor, but here's the information from the CMM. So we've merged that data together so you don't have to re-enter it or recheck it. as you go. So that is the main way we have to streamline the inspection process and how we can bring all of that data together. Please visit HiQA to request a demo and learn more.